two angels that came to Sodom at night, and Lot was sitting at the gateway of Sodom. As soon as he saw them, he got up and bowed down with his face to the ground.
Please, my lords, turn aside to your servant's house and spend the night and wash your feet. Then you can rise early and go on your way.
No, we will spend the night in the square.
Lot urged them strongly, so the angels turned aside to him and entered Lot's house.
Lot then made them a feast and baked bread without leaven, and they ate. Before they go to sleep, the drama begins. Yo! All the men of Sodom surround the house.
Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us so that we may know them. Lot then went out of the door to the men, shut the door behind him and said, I beg you, my brothers, do not act so wickedly. Look, I have two daughters who have not known a man. Let me bring them out to you, and do to them as you please. Only do nothing to these men, for they have come under the shelter of my roof. Stand back. This fellow came here as an alien, and he would play the judge. Now we will deal worse with you than with them.
The men of Sodom pressed hard against Lot and came near the door to break it down. The men inside, who were seen by Lot as angels, reached out their hands and brought Lot into the house with them and shut the door. Then suddenly, the men at the door of the house were struck with blindness and were then unable to find the door.
Then the men said to Lot, Have you anyone else here? Sons-in-law, sons, daughters, or anyone you have in the city, bring them out of the place. For we are about to destroy this place, because the outcry against its people has become great before the Lord, and the Lord has sent us to destroy it.
Lot went out and said to his sons-in-law, who were to marry his daughters, Up, get out of this place, for the Lord is about to destroy the city.
Then the Lord rained on Sodom and Gomorrah sulfur and fire from the Lord out of heaven. And he overthrew those cities, and all the plain, and all the inhabitants of the cities, and what grew on the ground. Lot's wife, who was behind Lot, looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. So Sodom and Gomorrah are not two men. Sodom and Gomorrah were sinful cities which regularly performed evil. This story of Sodom and Gomorrah is about hospitality and the social requirement of helping visitors. The story has absolutely nothing to do with homosexuality or two men who are committed and in love with one another and have sex. Rather, the men in the town decide to do one of the most inhospitable things possible: rape. Rape is one of the long list of evil doings in Sodom. Rather, the men surrounding the house were planning on raping the visitors, which is the most inhospitable thing to do. The words to know in verse 5 is a euphemism which is used in the Bible to mean sexual relations, and therefore they were expected to be raped, which is why Lot immediately offered his two daughters who have not known a man, in verse 8, as an offering for the men instead of the two visitors, because he knew what they meant about to know in the context. By societal norms in ancient times, Lot was expected to keep his visitors safe, and that they have priority over his own daughters, which also speaks of the value of women back then, where men and women were not equal. On top of that, if Lot knew that the men of Sodom were homosexuals, he would have not offered his daughters as an offering. Duh. In the Near East during ancient times, and today in wars that are occurring in Africa and the Middle East, soldiers commonly used or use rape as a way of humiliating their enemies. Traces can be seen in some of the laws in Africa, as in, a man raping another man was to treat them like a woman, and would make them less of a man and break their spirit, and shows brutality and hatred towards the enemy. There is no sexual desire involved at all. The men surrounding the house weren't a horny bunch of men craving some tight bussy. Believe me, you. Otherwise, they would be chanting, "We want some booty. We want some booty." The soldiers' intention is to break the spirit of their enemies and treat them like women, which will make them less than a man by raping them. And yes, rape of a man was a norm back then. The sin of Sodom is about hard-heartedness, abuse, insult to the traveler, and inhospitality to the needy, not about committed homosexual relationships that exist today. Even Jesus makes reference to Sodom in Matthew chapter 10, verses 5 to 15, and makes reference only to the town's lack of hospitality. If anyone will not welcome you or listen to your words, shake off the dust from your feet as you leave that house or town. Truly I tell you, it will be more tolerable for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah on the day of judgment than for that town. Jesus is teaching his disciples that they will face rejection, and predicts judgment against those who won't listen to God's word. If the main lesson to be drawn from the story of Sodom and Gomorrah is an anti-homosexual message, Jesus would have mentioned it, believe me, you. I mean, really guys, really, okay? Sodom is mentioned elsewhere in the Bible. Isaiah chapter 1 verses 10 to 17 and 3:9, Jeremiah 23:14 and Zephaniah 2:8-11. But the sins of Sodom, as identified in those texts, are injustice, oppression, partiality, adultery, lies, and encouraging evildoers. Even Jesus makes reference to Sodom in Matthew 10:5-15 as he talks about the rejection. In conclusion, Genesis is part of the Old Testament law that was given to Israelites, not Christians. Therefore, none of the laws in the Old Testament are binding on Christians today. When Jesus died, he automatically put an end to Old Testament law. Since he didn't, we are drawn to the conclusion that the Genesis passage has nothing to do with committed, consensual, loving homosexual relationships as we know it in the 21st century.